We are pleased to present the 2010 Bradley Prize to Paul Gigot.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be here with you all in such distinguished company, and I want to thank the selection committee. I want to thank the Lynd and Harry Bradley Foundation for including, in particular, a newspaper man in your midst amid all of these truly distinguished intellectuals. I say that because I assume that most of you feel about journalists the way that Lord Beaverbrook did. He was a media baron of the last century. And a woman once asked him if his reporters had to be intelligent, to which Beaverbrook replied, no, all I require is shorthand, typing, and a certain low rat-like cunning. By way of truth in advertising. I'm especially delighted because of the Wisconsin roots I share with the foundation and with the Bradley brothers. My late father was a pharmacist who owned a drugstore, and while he never succeeded in business on the scale of the Bradleys, he did share their commitment to free enterprise. And he and my mother imparted their beliefs to me in the way that wise parents always do, which is to say, without you really knowing it until you find yourself sounding like them 20 years later. I admire the Bradley Foundation in particular for its willingness to fight for ideas even when they seem politically unattainable. When Bradley began promoting school choice and charters and vouchers many years ago, the cause seemed unlikely, perhaps even hopeless. But reality usually finds a way, and now we can see in Washington, D.C., and New Orleans, and even in the city where I live now, New York, that school choice is finally gaining real political momentum. Its new supporters may not give the Bradley Foundation credit, but as my late boss Bob Bartley used to say, you know you've won the argument when liberals start adopting your positions while attacking you personally. I also want to thank Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi for making this evening possible. I have sometimes reflected back on the 1992 election and thought that had I known then what Bill Clinton would do for my career, I think I would have voted for him. I have not felt that way about Barack Obama, but I am warming to the idea. I'm warming to it because an eternal but unfortunate truth is that the prosperity of journalism is inversely proportional to the prosperity of a nation. Thus, our current government is a full employment opportunity for journalists. Some of you may recall Nancy Pelosi's explanation that we have to pass the health care bill in order to know what's in it. A novel approach to democratic governance. We have had the Cash for Clunkers program, under which, as George Will has pointed out, the government spent $13 billion to shift automobile sales from September to August. And of course, there is the Keynesian economic multiplier. I don't know how many of you know this. I have talked about this with John Taylor, but the Keynesian multiplier posits that for every $1 of new government spending, you get 1.5 times that in economic output. Some people really believe this. The multiplier logic reached its apotheosis recently when Congressman Jim McDermott declared that extending jobless benefits to 99 weeks had a 1.67 multiplier and would create tens of thousands of new jobs. So in other words, if we pay people not to work for an even longer period of time, more of them will end up working. Every day I go to the office knowing that someone in Washington is going to say something like this. How hard can my job be? I've come to think that President Obama's economic policy is like the famous cowbell skit in Saturday Night Live. I don't know how many of you know it, but Christopher Walken plays an aging rock and roll impresario who is advising a young band making an album. Will Ferrell is one of the band members. And with every take, Walken says, with a perfect deadpan, you know, the Walken deadpan, that the band sound is great, but just it really needs more cowbell. The Obama version of cowbell is more stimulus spending to drive more aggregate demand. Every other week, the president, and just this Monday, the President Larry Summers announced, what we really need is more stimulus for more aggregate demand. And I expect at a press conference soon to see Will Ferrell pounding away with a stick and a bell and have the president say, the economy has a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. Now, I know I'm an unusual choice for this prize because it is being presented to me less as an individual than it is as a representative of the Wall Street Journal. The other honorees tonight are institutions in their own right. I work for an institution, as I have for 30 years. I didn't create the Wall Street Journal or its editorial page tradition. I inherited it. I inherited it from all of the other editors, going back to William Hamilton 100 years ago, who first came up with its position in favor of free markets and free people. I inherited it from Bob Bartley, who gave that belief what he called muzzle velocity, starting in the miserable 1970s and through the great conservative political victories of the last 25 years. The Journal's editorial page also couldn't exist without owners willing to support it. When I was a columnist in Washington, I never fully appreciated how much grief owners take on behalf of people like me. There's always some Treasury Secretary or a World Bank president or a CEO who also happens to be an advertiser who wants to shut you up. And the Journal's owners have always insulated us from that pressure. That goes for the Bancrofts when it was Dow Jones, and it's equally true now under News Corporation and Rupert Murdoch, so I want to thank them. Journalists are by necessity generalists, which means we can't become experts on everything we write about. I'm certainly not. So we really do need intellectual help, and for that we require the generosity of friends and mentors, and I really have had some of the best. I won't embarrass them by mentioning their names, although some of them you saw in that film. But they know who they are, you know who you are, and I want you to know how grateful I am for your intellectual guidance. I really couldn't do what I do without you. Finally, I want to thank my Journal colleagues who are the real authors of what you read every day. They really do the heavy lifting. Often in anonymity, without much hope of getting rich. They do it because they love the work and because they believe in the same principles and the same ideas that you and I do. Those principles have had a rough couple of years, there's no question, but one thing I've learned putting out a daily newspaper and having to get up every morning and face that deadline every day is that there are no permanent victories and there are no permanent defeats. Thanks to our current government, the American people are once again learning what creates prosperity and what doesn't. This education is painful at times, but I suspect it will mean more victories for our ideas soon enough. The great privilege of my career has been that I get to get up every morning and join that debate every day, get paid to do it, writing for the world's most informed and influential readers who understand, like the Bradley Foundation understands, that ideas really can change the world. So I'm deeply grateful for that and deeply grateful for the Bradley Foundation this honor today. Thank you very much.